Hello everyone, welcome to our session, and the title for our session is Delivering Remote Post-Diagnostic Support, looking at the challenges and the opportunities during the COVID pandemic. My name's Jill Pendleton and I'm the Dementia Lead at Merseycare Trust, which is based in Liverpool, and I'm presenting with my colleague.
I'm Sarah Butchard. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist also in Merseycare.
Okay, so I'm just going to set some context really. So before COVID hit us, we were a service who were, like everybody else, probably delivering most of our interventions face-to-face. And we were heavily reliant on doing that. And we were commissioned, we're a service that's been commissioned to deliver quite a lot of group interventions. We were delivering up to 5 or 6 cohorts of post-diagnostic support at a time. So that's 7 sessions for the person with dementia and carer to attend. And we'd run 5 or 6 of those a week. And we were also delivering a range of CST groups, so 2 to 3 CST groups a week, so 6 groups a week. And we were delivering them at different locations across Liverpool to ensure that it was accessible for people across the piece. So that was kind of what we were doing. We had short waiting times. Our targets were to offer 100% of people structured post-diagnostic support, and roughly about 60% of those tended to take up the post-diagnostic support. We run it in terms of our model in Liverpool. We ran the sessions together for people with dementia and either a family carer or friends to attend with them. And they would come to one of the places where we deliver the groups for 7 sessions, 1 session a week. And it was sort of based on psychoeducation, where we were presenting information and discussing it with people, and they were getting some support from us and from the other people that were in the groups with them. In terms of ongoing support, once people had finished their CST course, we were running monthly CST sessions for them as a sort of top-up CST. We run a monthly memory group, which is a kind of open group that people who've attended post-diagnostic support can drop in and out of. Carer support group, peer-led groups. We have a care navigator service who are in touch with people with dementia from diagnosis onwards. And we also have a big mailing list for sending out information, newsletters, keeping people abreast of the developments. And then the pandemic hit, and obviously, like everybody else, things screeched to a halt. Not in terms of individual support, but obviously all the face-to-face stuff that we were delivering, there was a sort of pause in that and a rethink of that. And certainly in terms of the groups, we had to stop delivering face-to-face groups. So we were then faced with quite a few challenges. We are and continue to work with a population who've been in the mainly shielding category. So obviously a vulnerable group of people that we don't want to expose to any unnecessary risk. We, as an organisation, initially weren't using Zoom as a platform. And so that was a challenge for us, because we were trying to think about how we could offer support to people virtually. We had been told by the trust that face-to-face appointments were for urgent appointments only. They are advised to use the Attend Anywhere, the NHS England platform. And we did, explore that with people with dementia. We kind of co-produced a guide to using it, but it was quite a complicated system that wasn't really as intuitive for some of the people that we were supporting. There tended to be a slowing of initial assessments of people who are receiving a diagnosis of dementia because of the face-to-face elements of that and not being able to adhere to that. But what was happening all the time was this growing kind of backlog of people who were waiting for post-diagnostic support. So Sarah's just going to take us through what we did.
Yeah, so we kind of recognised that we were very reliant on face-to-face and that we were going to need to change the way that we worked. And I don't think either Jill or myself would put us up as being experts on this, but what we would like to do is just share some of the learning that we've kind of taken from what we've tried and what's worked and what hasn't, particularly given that it doesn't look like we're going to be moving away from this model anytime soon. So we have broken this into what we may be offered in relation to the more structured post-diagnostic support. So one of the first things that we did was we realised that we had all the information for post-diagnostic support available to us. So we recorded the sessions of post-diagnostic support in the same way that we're recording for you now, so that people could watch them at home on their own. Now, we know that that means that they don't get the group experience, but it meant there was one way of people getting that information. Similarly, we already used memory packs, so when people got a diagnosis with some information in it, so we upped our use of memory packs to make sure that everyone receiving a diagnosis was at least getting written information. And alongside that, individual support either from the care navigators or other members of the team to ensure that if people had information either through recorded sessions or through memory packs, that they were actually able to ask questions about that, to be able to get those answered in a more individualised way than just a very general kind of information giving. One of the things that we noticed from some of the calls we were getting was that there was a real increase in carers needing some support. And so we set up a weekly carer group by Zoom, which people could drop into as and when they needed to ask questions and to be able to kind of share some of the experiences that they were going through at this time. And then more recently, we have moved to doing post-diagnostic support sessions remotely. So the same format as we'd have used for previous sessions, but doing them in a more remote way via Zoom. And I think we'll talk in a little while about some of the challenges of that. But we kind of feel that at the moment, in terms of post-diagnostic support, this is kind of the offer that we can make to people. We struggled a little bit more when we came to think about CST, if we're honest, and it's still a work in progress. So we were previously offering quite structured CST, as Jill said, and it was twice a week and just for the person living with dementia. However, we couldn't find a way to really offer that remotely so easily. So we've set up kind of weekly Zoom-ins, we've called them, which are more to do with fun activities. So we'll have a quiz or some reminiscence, and people can just come along to those to kind of do those activities that maybe would provide some cognitive stimulation. Members of the occupational therapy department have set up activity packs, which would have some of the things that we would usually use in CST. So some quizzes, some games, some news items, which people can have sent out to them and they can use them at home with members of their family. We are looking at how we'll develop more formal virtual CST sessions, and also about how we equip carers with CST ideas and knowledge in line with the individualised CST model. So whether people are able to actually do some CST with the carers and with people that they're living with at home, so that the skills there are still being accessed. So that's kind of where we're up to with that. In relation to ongoing support, we've talked about having weekly Zoom-ins, weekly carers groups. The care navigators are still ringing people, and some of the feedback we've had is it felt really important to know that somebody was still thinking about you despite everything that was going on. So even just a phone call to say, are you okay? We have, as Jill alluded to earlier, quite a strong network of dementia support groups across Liverpool, with service user-led support groups, and they have continued in various formats. I think that two gentlemen living with dementia have set up a quiz, which they have on a Thursday afternoon, which they have huge attendance to actually. And they've found that that really helps bring people together. And they have a really active WhatsApp group, which Jill and I are not part of, but which they talk about all sorts of wonderful things on there by the sound of it. And so that peer-led support is still ongoing. And so we've had some definite challenges, a lot of them being things that you might expect. So we've had these ideas around digitally enabled assumptions, either that people can or can't use technology actually. So we have had the issues that people kind of feeling that they might not have access to Wi-Fi or access to the technology, but also just the language that's used around technology can be really difficult. So the words tablets have different meanings. So we've had to talk about using screens. You know, clicking on a link might sound very simple to lots of people, but actually if that's not language you're familiar with. So we've relied really quite heavily on stuff that's already out there. So we've utilised the Zoomettes guide to using Zoom, which we found really helpful and is available via the Dementia Voices Network, which is there. But also confidence in using technology, both for the person living with dementia, but also for staff, to be perfectly honest. You know, this has been a new learning kind of medium for all of us. But also finding the right platform. Jill mentioned Attend Anywhere didn't work, Zoom seems to work better. There's also been some practical challenges. So when we were attending groups, recalling an online appointment is not as fixed in memory as physical attendance. It seems hard for people to remember that the group will be at that time. And a major thing that we found is that it tends to be people with dementia aren't attending. It tends to be the carers that are coming along and attending. So support's required to get online and join groups, and we're thinking about how we do that, whether we need to provide the technology for people, whether we need to have more information for how people can get online. And generally, there is a real sense there that people are preferring face-to-face, so there is a backlog building up with no change in the foreseeable future. However, there are some real benefits to this, and I think we'd ask some people who've been attending the groups just to give you a little bit of feedback about what they've found from it. So we're going to...
For me, it's enabled me to retain my independence, being able to contact other members of the surf community and the dementia groups.
Thanks, Dan. Alan, what's it meant to you?
It's been good because I keep contact with other people at the group, and it's given me something to look forward to each week.
I'd say it during COVID, it's kept Phil and me sane. It's been our contact with the outside world for a large part.
Yeah, I look forward to these meetings. It's been a lifeline, I think, during this COVID pandemic. I look forward to seeing everybody.
I look forward to it because it's good to see everybody. And you don't get to see them in person, but this is the next best thing. And I like the quizzes as well.
Sorry.
Same as everyone else, I look forward to it. It's a connection with the outside world, especially when you've been shielding through COVID, and because I'm unable to see my husband in a care home.
Yeah.
Keeps me sane too.
Thanks, Pauline. And Roy, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, again, to reiterate, really, to stay in touch with reality, the outside world out there. It's been a boom. I try to imagine if it was just the phone, all these different forms of technology have allowed us to stay, I would say, in reality and be part of it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Before COVID, I hadn't even heard of Zoom. I didn't even know what Zoom was, but we've rapidly become experts in getting on there. But it has been the way to keep in touch with friends, and without it, I think we'd all be stuffed basically.
Before the lockdown, we were very busy. We went through a long period of not having any friends or anything or doing anything. So then we met all of you lovely people through Mosley Hill, through Roy, through Stan, through all the different groups, Surf, everything. And then all of a sudden that door was closed. So without this other door opening, I really don't like to think what life would have been like, to be honest.
So I think both Jill and I felt strongly that it was really important that you heard what people thought of the groups as opposed to just what we kind of think about them. But just to quickly kind of round up, I think we found that there's some things that went well and some things that could have been done better, aren't there, Jill? So we're just going to discuss those really briefly. But I think it's actually quite efficient time-wise. We are not having people having to travel to groups. We're not having ourselves to have to travel all over the place to do groups. And actually the sessions tend to be more intense, but actually a little bit shorter because of tolerating the time on Zoom. And we know that from the feedback we've received that it's particularly good support for carers. We've had very positive feedback. And I think The biggest thing is it's COVID safe. People are in their own homes, they're not travelling on public transport to get somewhere, they're not coming into contact with other people. So at the current time where we are, it really is kind of a safe way to kind of move forward. However, I do think there's some things that could be done better. And I know, Jill, you were saying, particularly from the group, the post-diagnostic groups you've done, that there seems to be less involvement of people with dementia.
Yeah, definitely tends to be carers that are coming into the groups and maybe saying, you know, I don't think this person will be able to tolerate it, without maybe enabling them to try. So trying to really encourage people to at least see if people can join in that way. I think that's really important, rather than just assuming that people won't be able to do it, because actually when you do get people on the screen and they see other people in the same situation, it's not as good as face-to-face, but it's still that forming that kind of connection and not feeling on your own, really.
Certainly, and I think we are aware that we're only reaching a small number of people in this way, the people who are tech enabled, but actually a real priority for us is trying to make as many people as possible able to access groups in this way while there aren't other options. And so that will be what we're looking at moving forward. We do think that this is not perfect by any stretch of the mean, and nothing's going to be the same as seeing people face to face and being in a room. And I think we probably are all feeling that during this conference as well. But actually, for now, it is something that we feel is probably a good alternative. So if people have questions, please get in touch with us. We're more than happy to kind of discuss it. As I said, we're not experts, but we will give it a go. Get in touch and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.